when it was extremely crazy to where it's at today. Let's do the comparison. Crazy times, how many days on market was average?
Well, we did a lot of holding offers, right?
So
let's say
days.
7 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then now for the properties that actually are selling. So if the absorption rate was 100 back in the peak, what's the absorption rate now?
I'm telling everybody, you're back to 30 to 60 days, and you're back to 2019 behavior. Now pricing is the number one thing that you have to get bang on. If you are not priced properly, you're not moving at all. You're not even getting showings.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
You're coming back, right? Yeah, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good to go?
We are ready to rock.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. We are continuing to be in person because Steve is in Toronto, and we have another very, very special guest who I'm going to introduce you in just a moment. But this episode is brought to you by Richard Robbins and Masters Academy. If you're listening to this and you're in the real estate community, meaning you're a real estate agent or someone getting your license or getting into it, I can very much say with confidence that November 14th and 15th in Toronto, those are the two dates that if you're a real estate agent in Canada, there's no better place to be. I've been to 14 or 15 of these events. I know, Steve, you've probably been to like way more than that even.
At least that many, if not more.
Our guest, Kim, is going to be there in person as well in Toronto. And how many have you been to?
At least 10.
10, yeah. And our listeners or viewers of this podcast are going to get a special discount on this event. That's correct, Steve?
$200 off using the link in the description below. November 14th, 15th, Northern Toronto. The event center is called. Does anybody know?
It's the by Peter and Paul's one. I think it's actually in Vaughan.
Yes.
But it's just outside the city.
Great spot.
Universal Event Space, I believe is what it's called.
If you're coming in from out of town, there's a couple of hotels there. That's where we'll be staying and probably having a couple too many drinks one evening afterwards. That's actually one of the best parts of the in-person event, is bonding with people that you don't normally get to that are going through the same crap as you are, and that is what is so awesome about the in-person conference. So there's the 2-day in-person conference, $200 off using the link in the description below, and then we get to see a bunch of cool speakers and level up our business and learn what other people in our industry are doing.
And you know what I'll just say too is that like we just hosted our own video mastermind event yesterday, and I got to meet all these people in person for the first time that I felt like I knew virtually.
We're already friends.
We're all friends, and it's like, so if you've been listening or watching this podcast and we don't know you personally yet, I think it would be really cool to see you at this event and hang out and chat about the industry. But that's it for the ad side of this beginning of the podcast. We're very, very excited because we have a guest who flew in, not just for the podcast, but she flew in. So Kim Heizmann is here joining us. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Tell me where you flew in from.
So from Kelowna, BC.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Okanagan.
Okanagan. So the Okanagan, for those that don't know, the areas that you service in is the Okanagan like the area and there's little areas in it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the Okanagan is in the interior of British Columbia. It's
Yep.
about 4 hours into the middle of the province. And the Okanagan goes from the south end of Penticton all the way up to the north end, which is, Vernon, and then up into the Shuswap, Sicamous, Seminar
It
area.
is wine country.
Wine country.
It is definitely wine
And
country.
beautiful golf course
When
country.
I was growing up,
And lake country.
when I was growing up, it was orchard and apple country.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait a minute, we need to
Add some
switch
grapes.
to something more profitable. So now
Yeah.
it is, in my estimation, some of the best wine now in the world.
Yeah,
the
it's
Okanagan.
it's beautiful. The lifestyle we have
Yeah.
is amazing.
It is very Southern California-ish.
Right.
Right? Not beach-wise. Well, I guess there's lakes and stuff, but not necessarily beach-wise, but like...
Do you swim in the lakes there?
Oh yeah.
You do? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I often call us the Canadian Napa Valley.
Yeah.
Because it's very similar
Exactly
vibe.
what it is.
Yeah.
Finally, a BC episode.
Yes.
And you had mentioned yesterday, actually, that you originally weren't from there, but now you're there and there's no way you're coming back to Ontario. That's the truth?
That is the truth. I'm originally from Ontario.
Where were you from?
I was born in North Bay, Northern Ontario.
Wow.
And grew up in London.
Yeah.
And then at 14, my parents went out to BC to have a holiday and decided they loved it so much they bought a house while they were there and found a job and came back and told us we were moving.
Wow. I've heard so many times people from BC saying how beautiful it is, and other people from BC are like, shh, shh, shh. Don't tell the Ontarians. We don't want them to come. We like what we've got going on here.
They know.
Like, let's not give out the secret.
Yeah, I think the secret's out.
It's secret. I think it is it.
So what's happening in Vernon real estate?
Vernon real estate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's where you're focused, right? You're mostly
Vernon and Kelowna. I do
okay.
both.
I mean, they're like Surrey and
similar.
Abbotsford for me, right? They're
Yeah.
within the same market.
Yeah,
What's
they're
going
half
on
an
there?
hour apart. It's pretty hot. It's during COVID, the lifestyle that we have really attracted a lot of people. So there was a lot of relocations into the area.
Is that coming from the Lower Mainland mostly, from Vancouver mostly?
Our Lower Mainland buyer stat really jumped up. It went up to about a quarter, like 25% of the buyers coming in were out of the Lower Mainland only. So that jumped up from about, I think it was about 14 or 15% before COVID.
Wow.
So quite a bit.
And what about outside province buyers? Did you see a lot of that as well during the craziness of what the last 2 years were?
I personally did.
Yeah.
About 90% of, no, maybe not 90, probably about 75% of my deals were relocations into the area. Like it was a lot.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a lot of people coming in.
Wow.
And the Okanagan is also not just Vancouver's vacation spot, but it's also Calgary's vacation spot.
Yes.
It's equal distance, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're 5 to 6 hours each way from both of those cities. So like a Soyuz is probably 90% Calgarians.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
assume, right?
And that percentage, surprisingly enough, that percentage dropped in regards to the buyers coming in. And then the locals prior to COVID, about 74% were just local buyers. That dropped to 55%. So the locals were staying put and more people were coming in from outside the area. So yeah,
Awesome.
it's slowed recently with all these bank rates.
Where hasn't? Where hasn't?
Apparently, like Calgary is the only market that's still kind of moving.
I mean,
Not what it was, but like still feels.
I love everybody from Alberta, but they had a pretty low bar to cross over honestly, like their market depressed for,
Well, they
long.
didn't
years.
behave like the rest of the country did during COVID.
I mean, steady decline in prices from when we were talking to Melanie from 2014 in Fort McMurray until last year, steady decline.
It's and I think she said 2014 is still the peak.
Still the peak.
They never got back over it.
That's
in Fort
crazy.
McMurray.
So even after the craziness of early this year and late last year, they're still not past the peak of 10 years earlier,
Wow.
which is nuts.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if Alberta's going to be a fair measure going forward. Right.
Yeah.
But the good news is, and I'm glad you're here, we're going to cool off our market
Oh, geez.
in BC
Yeah.
just in time for the coldest market ever.
Yeah.
What's your take on the cooling off period? Should we explain the cooling off period for Tom, who's
From Ontario.
Well, I think too, for people listening that aren't from BC, the reality is that most of the policies that BC puts in place, whether it was like you did the foreign buyer tax first, you did the vacancy tax first, it's mostly taxes actually. Eventually Ontario copies you. We see what's going on, we check it out, and then eventually 2 to 5 years later, it comes to us. So I think they're going to be watching very closely how this plays out on your side of the country, where it could happen here. So anyone listening, whether you're a buyer, seller, or a realtor that's in Ontario, it's like, this could come. You better be prepared if this comes here as well.
yeah. Yeah.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Landlord. If you've not heard of Landlord, it is a software platform designed for real estate investors. It helps you easily track your portfolio and get reminders when things like rent and utility payments are due. But the best feature and my most favorite feature of the entire platform is something called a deal analyzer. This is where you, as a real estate investor, can log into the software, plug in your future potential purchase, and the system quickly comes up with important information like cap rate, cash on cash return, and even future potential values. It's a totally free software, but listeners of the Tom Tom Storey Show can get 90 days of the upgraded paid version right now totally for free by either clicking the link down below in the description or going to landlord.io/TomShow. And if you're a real estate agent and you're not using this software to quickly and efficiently analyze deals for your clients, well, I think you're doing your clients a disservice. Download Landlord today for a quick and easy way for you to analyze not only your own future purchases, but those of your clients. So again, that's landlord.io/TomShow to sign up right now, and listeners of the Tom Storey Show receive 90 days of the paid version totally for free. I have tried this software myself. I think it's fantastic and extremely useful as a real estate investor. Sign up today. That's landlord.io/TomShow. And now back to the podcast. So for those that don't know, it is basically a right of rescission, right? That's what they're introducing. So I have been so adamantly against it because I don't believe in the nanny state, right? This is, hey, you are going into a contract. The market was overheated. We want to remove your ability to make your own decision, and we're going to protect you so you can walk away from any accepted offer contract. That is already in place. I'm sure it is here with developers.
We've got a 10-day cooling off period if you buy new construction, but it does not exist in resale as of yet.
Correct. And why is that there? Because the developer has 400 units. They can resell them. They got deep pockets probably, and they're experienced. The person coming into the sales center is probably not represented.
No, they're not.
Right.
Well, a lot of the times they're
Usually not.
They're not, and they're being sold how great it is by someone who works directly for the person who's selling it.
Correct.
Like they're not being represented sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now they're going to introduce this to you selling your home if you're a homeowner in BC, right? So you now have to, the buyer then has the right to walk away at any given time, within the first 3 days, apparently.
3 business days?
Well, we're going to discuss this because the recommendation put out by the BC, I say this wrong all the time, the BC FSA.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I usually get the S and the F wrong. The recommendation was 27 pages long in small print. It was no joke.
Nighttime reading material?
It was put you to
I
sleep.
think they had 32 recommendations. So because what happened was all the local associations got together and with BC.
Were you part of this, by the way, based on your role?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had several meetings because I was the president of the association at the time.
Yep.
Even when I was on holidays, I was sitting in some Zoom meetings because BCFSA wanted the input of all the associations and realtors alike. Mm-hmm. So we brought forward a lot of concerns that all of us had as an industry about, the rights of sellers and, what the unintended consequences would be of this decision. So we got together, did that. BCREA, which is our provincial organization, got together and did, I think it was 40 some odd recommendations and then they wrote a white paper on this. And said, okay, we understand we want to do consumer protection because it's all about protecting the consumer, which as an industry, we agree with.
Let's go back just a little bit. BCFSA is the regulating body, which is the government.
Okay.
They replaced our council.
Okay.
Right. We no longer have a council.
Yes.
The BCREA is the Association of Realtors.
Right.
So what Kim's now talking about is the realtors went, hey, I know what you're proposing, but here's what you should really do.
Yeah.
Right?
Based on ground level experience, and here's
Correct.
what's actually happening.
Yeah. In the trenches,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Based on filling our own greedy pockets only,
Yeah,
Right.
according to the YouTube commenters.
So BCREA, which is the association, had a list of I can't remember the exact number, but it was in the 40s, and then gave that to BCFSA, which is the governing body.
Did they listen to any of it?
Actually, BCFSA did listen to the BCREA.
Yeah, very confusing.
Oh my
eh?
God.
Let's just
So
call it like
The association.
The governing body, not the government, because
Right.
they also come in. The
Right.
governing body, I love them. Obviously you never really have too much love for the person that's looking over your head all the time, but I love what they did because the government said this is what we want done.
Right.
They did their own research after and said, okay, this is what we want done. And then I think they trolled the realtors because when the realtors gave their recommendations to the governing body went, oh yeah, let's dump all them in too. So they were like, sure. Like that, and none of the recommendations were the same.
Right.
So they were like, let's keep packing them on. So I just pulled up the report. I have it right here on the laptop. I apologize. It is 80 pages.
Oh.
So the recommendations made by
Is there an audiobook version of it?
No. You
Can I
actually
listen to it
have
in the
to
car?
read it all.
I will try, if I'm smart enough, I will link this report in the description of this podcast.
But the actual government only took like a half of 1 point that their own governing body, the BCFSA, the suggested to them.
Crazy.
So yeah, it's
so I remember
crazy.
this because last time I was here, remember we went to the Leafs game?
Yeah, you got it happened
I got
then.
the message at the Leafs game, like, ding. Oh, BC announced cooling off period.
Oh, great.
So this was November last year. And I remember looking down going, okay, well, what is this all about? And it was basically the government said, we're doing it. Now we're going to do our due diligence to find out if it's responsible.
right. Yeah, let's do it and then figure out how.
And so they put it on the governing body to find out how. They did, in my estimation, I think the governing body actually did a really, really good job.
Agreed.
I think they came out with a bunch of good points. And then they eventually delivered their paper, which included all of everything, like all these crazy recommendations, 80 pages of them. And then the government just did exactly what they said they were going to do in the first place.
And didn't listen to any of
Didn't
this.
listen
Nope.
to any of their own regulating body's recommendations. They just did what they announced in advance.
So it's not even like they didn't listen to the realtors. It's they didn't listen to the regulating body of the realtors.
I don't even think they read their own report. Sorry, not their own report. I don't think they read the report that was handed to them by the governing body, of which they hired to make the report and tell them what the best way to do it was.
They're like, oh, sorry, you sent it? It must have bounced back. I never got the email.
It just goes to show you that the policy being made is only to get votes. So they already had the decision made. They make it, they put it in, and then even after consultation, they're like, yeah, we're still doing it the way we wanted to. Because it's only whatever reads right.
And I even think that the title is wrong because, the general public hears cooling off and they think it's, this is to cool off the market.
Right.
Yes.
It's not intended
Right.
to cool off the market. It's intended to cool off the buyer. And that was due to the fact of the extreme pressures that the buyers had during COVID.
Yep.
Well, that's all done.
I know.
This is a year late.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to cool off the market?
Yeah.
Tiff Macklem just figured out how to do that.
How is that?
Oh, you raise interest rates really fast.
You raise interest rates faster
Right?
than ever before in history, except for 1981 when the market tanked 40%
Exactly.
in that year.
Yeah.
It's amazing how those things are tied. And then, so you cool the buying market. What's the rental market doing right now?
Oh.
It's insanity. Is it insanity in the Okanagan? as
Oh
well?
yeah, there's it's below 1% vacancy rate. It's you can't find a place to rent.
Can you do short-term rentals there? Is that allowed?
It depends.
Okay. Okay.
Depends where. It depends on bylaws.
Okay.
Yeah, like it really depends. Yeah.
Yeah. Our
So-
rental market's gone crazy.
Someone's at the front door, Tom.
No, it's a package. We'll keep rolling.
You better go get it so they don't steal it off your porch.
No, it's all good. Maybe I'll go grab it. You guys can.
So let's dive into this. We do not edit, by the way, Kim, on this. I'm gonna make him. Oh, hey Tom, we can do our first unboxing. Those get great views. So then they announce it.
Yeah.
They announce it, and did you read the actual government announcement?
All 80 pages?
No. So that was the BCFSA. Did you read? I'm gonna see if I can Google it right now because I thought it was comical. The actual release when the government said, "Okay, we've looked at all the data. We know what we're gonna do. Here it actually is," and it was like you said,
Yeah, like it was
3 lines.
yeah, and it had no direction for anybody.
So this is how the governing bodies work, though. The government makes the rule, or tells which direction they want to do. The BCFSA or what used to be council would make the rule, and then it's up to the realtors to figure out how to put the rule in place. Realtors and boards,
Right.
to put the rule in place.
Yeah.
So yeah, nobody has asked, is this actually going to work, or how do we implement it? So now we know the rule. We have no idea how to implement it.
Well, and this is legislation. So this isn't just what realtors have to do. This is anybody.
Right.
Anybody selling their house in BC, even if for sale by owner, sells their house,
They have to follow this.
they have to follow these rules because it's legislation.
Yeah, so it's not
You wanna
on the
know-
realtors. It's just on anybody that owns a
Anybody.
home.
What they
Anyway.
actually did was they changed property law. So how you are allowed to own a property, you have to sell it in this manner. You have to give the buyer the right to walk away. So it wasn't even legal before.
They changed the law.
They had to change the law. They
Yeah.
had to change property law, right?
Wow.
So for instance,
How often is property law changed?
This is the
Not-
first time
not
I
very
I've
often.
never.
I mean, I'm not
heard of
brushed
it.
up on it.
Yeah.
But so speaking of, let's go back to the other thing they did, which was they restricted assignment in BC. So in 2016, there was a politician trying to stay elected, and they were like, the problem is flipping houses.
The ghost flipping, is that what it was called? Ghost flipping or
shadow flipping.
Shadow flipping.
Shadow
What a
flipping.
Yep.
nasty word.
Yeah.
Shadow flipping. Otherwise known legally as assignment of contract.
Yeah.
So they removed that in an effort to the BC Liberals to get reelected. The only problem with assignment of contract is it's governed by contract law. In Canada, in BC, every single contract is assignable. If I want to buy your car off of you, I don't know what else you would do a contract for. But whatever it is, I can then sell that paper to anybody else. If I buy your business, I can flip your business. So they couldn't actually change or they wouldn't dare change the contract law. So what they had to do was they could say, by the way, realtors, you're not allowed to write a contract without that clause in it. So they restricted the realtor's ability to write a contract with assignment of contract in it. So now it's excluded.
So what happens if somebody buys a property and then it's a firm sale and there's 40 days till closing and something happens in their life where they can't get out of it. They've tried to work with the seller to get a mutual release. They've tried to figure it out. They have to close now. They cannot assign it.
No, you can still assign.
This
Just
is
with
the best part. Listen to this. Listen to this.
you can still assign a contract.
Okay.
It just has to be disclosed within the offer. So there's a clause of notwithstanding clause 20, and it goes on and on and on about being able to assign it to an immediate family member or company or something.
So we have to write
Yeah,
a contract now that says
it may be assigned
it cannot be assigned.
or cannot be assigned. Right.
That's that our contract now says it cannot be assigned.
But,
right?
but you can assign it?
No,
Like-
what does the buyer do? Please take out that
clause.
clause.
Oh, and they can ask for that.
That every buyer does.
Right.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And the seller doesn't care because they just want their property sold. They
Right.
don't care who they sell it to, so it's not a real problem in the first place. So what they did was now every buyer just cross that out. And the seller goes, well, I want to sell, so I don't care if it's crossed out.
Does the buyer, what if the buyer doesn't know that? Like you as a real estate agent that's told that you legally have to put that clause in there, who's advising the buyer to cross it out if they don't know? Is it the lawyer?
No.
It's a tough question, I get it, but-
So I will say that in my market anyway, in Surrey, we have a demographic who usually will write, like you'll have big ethnic families, and usually the top of the family, whether it be the oldest male or whatever, will write the contract, and those guys will put 4, 5, 6 people on title sometimes to get the place closed.
Interesting.
So before they used to just be able to write it in one name and then put whoever they need on title in order to close. Now you have to designate all those people on the offer, or you have to cross that out, designate them later. It's a total pain. So they couldn't, getting back to the whole point of that, they couldn't actually change the law, or they dare not change contract law. This time, they actually changed property law.
When is this coming into place?
January 1st.
January 1st.
January 1st, 2023.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It is,
And so walk me through it as like, I get how it works, right? But if I'm someone watching this and next year I'm thinking of buying a property in BC, okay? I make my offer on the house. I get it accepted. One thing that you guys have different, which is weird for me, is that when we get an offer accepted, the deposit's due within 24 hours, not when it's firm. When it can be conditional, you still got to give the deposit. So for you guys, you get the offer accepted. Now, it doesn't matter what conditions were in there or not in there, because no matter what, there's 3-day cooling off. And is it to buyer's satisfaction? Is just for any reason in that 3 days?
We don't know, do
We don't know.
We don't know.
That's the stupid thing
First
about
question
this.
though, do you guys in the Okanagan generally take deposit on acceptance or on subject removal?
It depends. It's negotiated almost every time. I usually write it in, when we remove conditions. Sometimes I'll do a, half now, half later. It just depends on the situation.
I don't think the government knows that point.
That's interesting because here it's like you get the deposit on conditional sale.
Right.
And even though absolutely it's still in the buyer's hands and that we have to give them their deposit back within 10 business days if they walk away.
Yeah.
There's something about the fact you delivered the deposit, you were serious.
Yeah.
And most of our transactions that go conditional, not all of them, I don't know what the exact percentage is, but for me, 95 go firm. 95% go firm.
I can tell you exactly. I track it. So this year we are at, I think, 56 firm transactions, 14 collapses.
Wow.
So we've written, let's call it 70 transactions, and only 56 of them have firmed up. That is not a good thing for the overall market, right? Like for the overall sellers out there, those aren't good numbers, right? That shows me that not a lot of, let's call it 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 buyers are not super serious about their purchase.
Right.
So if I'm a buyer, sorry, go on.
Well, no, I was just going to add. So in regards to the deposit, I think it will change in BC because if you rescind your offer, there's also going to be a penalty attached to it.
I saw that. So it's a percentage of the purchase price?
I
the
believe
penalty?
so. 0.25% of the.
For $2,500 on $1 million purchase, that's what it would
Yeah.
be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you still pay a penalty if you walk away.
Within those 3 days.
Kim, how are you going to get that?
Oh, well, I think you're going to make sure that it's in the deposit at the very beginning of an accepted offer.
Let's go back though. So what they did is they announced, okay, this will be 3 days.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody was thinking, 7 days. No, that was unfair, but it's 3 days. So it's 3 days, but my understanding now is it's 3 clear days. So if you accept tonight,
So
let's
the
say
sun
Monday
has to be out?
Well, just like if you're serving notice to a tenant, 24 hours clear notice, right?
Right.
So if you're doing offer presentation Monday night, my
Tuesday
understanding is
starts on Tuesday.
Wednesday, Thursday. So if it's Thursday midnight would be when they would have to walk away, and then Friday. So I'm trying to figure out now. So is everybody just going to write 4-day conditions and then avoid it completely?
Yep.
That's interesting.
Right.
What's your typical condition now anyways? What's the number
10
of
days to 2 weeks.
That's so wild. Like
It
5
is
days is the
wild right
longest
now.
I see in Toronto.
Well, so 10 days to 2 weeks since the market has cooled.
Got it.
Back in COVID, no.
I mean, we had no conditions during
Yes.
the pandemic, and now it's like we're getting 5-day financing, 5-day status review, 3-day inspection. We're not going past 5 business days.
Wow.
In our market right
Normally.
Yeah.
Like some really difficult stuff maybe.
now, if
but
I get a 5 to 7 day subject removal, I know it's going to firm up. If I get an offer with a 10 to 14 day subject removal, I know that buyer hasn't been to the bank, and the realtor has no idea what their buyer's financing is. So I know that deal's not going to come together.
Right. And the experience I'm having right now, especially in my area, is the mortgage brokers and or the banks that my clients are working with are telling us that they need that time. So if they need that time, then how many offers are being dealt with on the top of the desk first before ours, and then are ours being dealt with 2 days before subject removal? Like they're not being dealt with right away.
because they know they have that time.
They have the time. So they're, yeah.
So you're sitting patiently waiting, and then you find out it falls apart the day before the conditions instead of. 'Cause
Right.
It's really just so it's the mortgage brokers really asking for the time, maybe.
maybe lenders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the mortgage broker, but who's financing
Yeah.
the.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is, while we're sitting in that Leafs game last year and they announced this,
Yeah.
I was like, I don't care about the Leafs. Sorry, Tom.
We won that game in overtime.
Hey, I'm going to a game today.
We
Jays though.
Jays, right.
we did we wink did win that game in overtime. It was kind of exciting, actually. It's nice to see a win. I'm a Vancouver fan, so we don't see wins often. Within the period of that game, while I was scrolling through my Instagram in the third period when I didn't care, I think it was Jeff from New West. He was like, so this is within 2 hours of the article coming out. He's like, wait, is cash deposit to the seller the new firm offer?
Like non-refundable deposit.
Non-refundable cash
Right.
deposit to the seller directly upon offer, even with your 3 walking away or
Oh.
walk away days. Like, is that they didn't address that at all?
Nope.
They haven't brought that up.
Nope.
Zero.
Even at this point.
Zero.
Nope.
Wouldn't that be the most obvious way?
It literally took realtors 20 minutes to figure it out.
Right. So it's like we've already got to work.
See, we're smarter than people think.
We are very good at here. Okay. So yes, we're smarter than people think. What is our job?
To
Work
help
for
our
our
clients.
To figure out ways to help people get what they want.
Yeah.
That's our job.
It's literally what we're hired by them to do.
Right? Whether that's get out of a property or get in. Man, we are really patting ourselves on the back here. We can keep going. So yes, it now does come with a 0.25% or $250 on every $100,000.
Isn't it kind of funny how they're saying, like, listen, we're putting this in to protect you, but if you do it and you walk away, you still pay a penalty. Like, I'm surprised they put the penalty in.
I think
Is that to stop people from making 6 offers at once
So
and then figuring it out after?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that was a major concern by a lot of realtors is like, well, who's going to stop someone from putting in 8 offers and rescinding 7?
They already
And
do
then-
that in my market.
Wow. Okay.
They just don't remove conditions.
Right.
Right? It happens constantly. So
But you're
that is-
waiting 10 days, not 3 days.
Trust me, it is a real thing where a lot of agents think it's okay to go write 6 or 7 offers, and then the buyer just, after he negotiates 6 or 7 deals, I don't know why the realtor would do this much work for somebody that's not serious. They'll pick the house of which they think is the best and just walk away from the other ones.
Yeah, I just don't agree with that.
Well, so here's the only problem with it is to prove, like, you have to write a contract in good faith.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to prove it, though, you have to be able to take that buyer to court and prove that they did not have the ability or intention of actually buying all of those properties.
Hard thing to prove, right?
Zero. Impossible to prove, right? So we don't even get the buyer's address on our contracts. Like, we can't even find
Buyer's
the person.
address. No, we don't get that either.
It should be mandatory.
Really? You think?
100%. You're entering into a contract. Why should I not? If I'm selling you my $2.5 million house, why shouldn't I know your name and your address? Right? Seriously.
I get the question.
I mean, I don't know. It is all kind of ridiculousness. I just don't see how that money's ever actually going to flow. So I would assume we're now going to be accepting the deposit earlier, which would be good. It would be then put into our trust accounts.
Oh, and they had to change the rules about trust accounts in BC to adapt.
Oh, I don't
to
know
this
this.
too. They have to.
So what
because right now you can't
release it.
remove anything out of a trust account unless both buyer and seller agree. It's court ordered. All those rules.
Sure.
I think there's a couple other rules. Anyway, so if this is these are so many questions. Like, even as an association, we waited for the government to announce, okay, what's going to happen and how are we going to deal with this? And again, when you heard the same notification that we did, we're like, well, what do we do? We still don't have any direction. So we don't know how it's supposed to be paid out. We don't know. I did read something, and I can't remember the exact wording, but it does say that they are changing the permission for a brokerage to release part of the deposit if someone were to rescind for this penalty.
Do you know how scary that is with some of the brokerages out there? Do you understand? Like, oh yeah, by the way, the seller has authorized me to release the deposit to them. What's the buyer going to do if that amount is not calculated?
Let me
correctly?
ask you a hypothetical question, right? So, let's say there's a brand new brokerage that starts in an area and they have very small agent count and their trust account is not filled like other brokerages, and something changes and they can't pay. Like, I'm just saying that factors in too, not only just like
It's supposed to be separate, but in BC about 5 or 6 years ago, we actually had a brokerage that
they go under sometimes.
the couple that owned it drained that account for their own personal use. Like, they're like going to jail, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that is a thing. Here, you want to know something that will blow your mind, Tom? BC has been considering, or at least looking at, the model of what they call single licensing. So that means removal of all brokerages.
So essentially,
break that
everybody
down for
would
me.
be their own broker.
So essentially, the government then becomes the broker, kind of. Like,
That's interesting.
You would almost have a different license, of which, like, my managing broker now, they would almost be like a consultant, and I would pay them to do the consulting. But I would be responsible at that. Well, the question is who would be responsible for the trust funds, but they're talking about removing brokerages completely and having the license go direct to council or whatever, and then everybody's their own guy.
Is there other industries where that's the case?
There must be.
That it goes direct to the government and there's no in between.
It's crazy to me to even suggest that, because if you think that, just for instance, just brokerages that have trouble or maybe are not super ethical, that's one brokerage that you're dealing with. They might have 4,000 agents. Now you're going to have 4,000 people that don't know what the hell they're doing, right? I don't want to learn how to balance a trust account. Do you?
Well, I have my broker's license.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. Well,
but I'm not a managing broker. I'm an associate broker, right? So I have that level of licensing, but it's challenging. It's huge responsibility. You make the wrong decision, there's big consequences that go with that.
If you're a broker of record, right? If anyone in your brokerage does something that gets them in trouble, it comes back to you.
Oh yeah.
You're the one dealing with it.
Yep.
You
Right?
get named in the lawsuit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Oh yeah.
I honestly don't understand why some people want to run their own brokerage, because I think for the most part, if you just go with a good company and you're a sales representative, you're just you can do your thing and it's fun and less headaches, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought this up, Steve, because when that got brought up, it was probably about 2-3 years ago when that got brought up, because the government came out to the industry and said, okay, well it wasn't the government, it was the BCFSA, it was council at the time.
Council.
And
it was the superintendent.
That's right,
Yeah.
of real estate. And after they presented those ideas to us as an industry, most recently over the last year and a half, I've been thinking, geez, I wonder if they were setting us up. I wonder if they were just setting us up to think, well, it was something that we showed you a few years ago. I don't know. I've had it in the back of my mind. I've been thinking about that as well.
Yeah,
I'm scared.
I never give it that much credit, right?
Was so the changes in rules and regulations for BC real estate, it sounds to me like a lot of them have happened in the last 10 years. 5 years. Okay. Now
It really started in 2016, so six years. Yeah.
Okay.
And before that, for the 35, 40 years before that, did much change regulation wise? So why is it happening now? It's happening now because there's more, it's prices, it's more noise happening now. Shadow flipping, all these big newsworthy headlines.
Yeah.
That's why it's happening now. It's just the run up in prices, right? People are mad and they're saying, fix this for us.
Yeah. So in my estimation, the Olympics turned Vancouver into an international city, right? It went from, when I was growing up in school, Vancouver was the third market in Canada, right? It was always behind Montreal. We're way past Montreal.
Really?
Yeah. We're way past Montreal now. I don't know why.
Prices and population.
In everything, right? I don't know about population. Maybe not. I think
Sports
Quebec
teams
is
like-
still-
Are you the center of the universe now?
No, we are in the center of the universe right now.
No, that's Toronto.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I forgot where I was.
Center of Canada, at least.
I don't know. I'm interested. One of the notes that I noted in the regulatory report that was put in, one of the exemptions for this, government-owned property.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. Right? By the way, this rule is so good for you that we're going to exempt ourselves from it.
Right. Yeah,
That's
there are
interesting.
4 exemptions like leasehold.
What are the other ones?
Leasehold, court-ordered sale,
Yeah.
government-owned, and I don't know what the last one is.
Court-ordered sale, though, you got to wait for court. So I'm assuming
It's longer than that anyways, right?
it's, well, okay, so after the court order is when
Right.
it would be exempt, I would think.
Yeah.
There is another rule that they've proposed, and I can't see how this can ever come in. There is the push, and I think it was in theory, communism works too, I guess, but in theory, they want to have a limit of how many agents can be under a broker.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by the Real Estate Video Course. Today's real estate industry has changed, and you can no longer rely primarily on door knocking, cold calling, and geo-farming. While these strategies still work, video provides something that these traditional methods just don't, and that is leads that reach out to you because of you and the message and content that you are providing. I believe that video is king, and that through video, you can leverage your message, create stronger relationships, and become the authority on real estate in your marketplace. The Real Estate Video Course is a 5-part course that will teach you the fundamentals of video, including why it's so impactful, the equipment that you need to invest in to get started, and the proven tips and strategies used to ensure long-term success. So go to videocourselogin.com today to become a true creator, level up your editing and production skills, and develop your real estate video plan to leverage your message to current and prospective clients. That's videocourselogin.com. The link is below in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code TOMSHOW at checkout for 10% off any purchase. That's videocourselogin.com and use the checkout code TOMSHOW. That's TOMSHOW.
They want to have a limit of how many agents can be under a broker.
Like a daycare, like 2
Yes,
adults
yes.
per
That is
per
the
16
best
kids.
analogy.
50 agents to one broker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they want to limit that. So before the run up in the market,
That's not that crazy of a thought. Just like in terms of
I actually think it's a
support that
great
you can
thought.
give to
correct.
Yeah.
How many agents can you support as a broker?
Right.
You
Properly.
can't have
properly
three-
is I think the biggest
Yes.
word here.
You can't have 3,000 agents under you and be a correct broker, right? Like it's just not
Mathematically impossible.
Not enough time in the day. I mean, there are even brokerages right now that charge their realtors to speak to the managing broker, which I think should be illegal. But here's the only issue with that. Okay, so we want, I don't know, let's say 50 people, right? So they did the math before everybody got licensed during COVID and now wants to make $1 million in real estate. I think they said, if we do this, if we break this number down when we were at like 16,000 realtors in the province, we need another 750 brokers province-wide. There's only 250 now.
And, I just heard this stat recently. I think, I think it's over 50%. And I don't know if this is correct or not, are over 65.
Yes.
Of the current
Yes.
Of the
Yes.
current brokers that we
Okay.
have. And I can't remember the exact amount, but a lot of them will be retiring
And
over
here's
the next 5 to 7 years.
A managing broker can in BC be selling or non-selling. If they are non-selling, which is the way I think you should go personally, that's how my brokerage works. If they're non-selling, I don't know what those guys are making, but I'm assuming it's between, let's call it maybe $60,000 to $100,000 a year. I don't think there's many making more than that.
That's where I wanted to go with this. Okay, so when you say managing broker, we call them like office managers, where it doesn't have to be the broker of record, but it's like for that office, there's someone that you go to and you trust, and that's the person.
That's kind of what Kim's license would be as an associate broker. You would have the ability, but you're not necessarily that person.
So that to fill that role, to take a highly productive realtor out of selling,
Yes.
to fill that role, you're not anyone that really is good at this. Salary wise, why would you make that switch unless it's a purely lifestyle thing? I want to go back to 9
is
to
a
5.
lifestyle.
It's got to be a lifestyle thing. Maybe if you're getting to the end of your career, like, oh yeah, sure, why not? But then maybe you're not up to date on all the things that are happening right now, and then you got the newer agents that aren't doing much that might get their broker license and go, I'll do that because it guarantees me this. It's a hard position to fill. I know in Toronto, it's a very hard position to fill. You have to find that middle ground between someone that doesn't want to sell anymore, but actually knows enough to be helpful in that position. That's a tough, like we've had massive turnover at our brokerage in that position. It's massive.
Yeah.
And we're like a very well-run, good company that would be great to work for, but it's this weird middle ground.
Right.
It is a total middle ground. And from what I see, the best brokers are usually the realtor that was so book smart but couldn't really cut it in the sales world, right? Like that's a really good broker because they want the security. And then a lot of the other times too, it's guys that maybe come out of commercial that are used to that 9 to 5, and they're just like you're saying with lifestyle. Like I'm not going to do weekends and evenings anymore. I don't mind taking a call, but I'm really picking my family. And then you're talking about probably reducing your income by crazy
If you're
amounts.
producing, then yes, it would be a big drop in income.
Crazy amounts. I do think it would be a great industry to actually teach people and have them come up, right? Like put them in schooling, how many people could you teach through a schooling method and then bring them in as a broker? It could be a really cool thing. They wouldn't have the experience of dealing with crazy real estate agents like Kim here, but like like there's got to be some sort of solution. I would love to see more brokers. There's no reward for it.
No, and the challenge is the fact that there are not going to be enough brokers. If more don't come in, is a huge issue, which is why I think the government looked at or is looking at single brokerage.
All right, you guys keep talking about this. I have an offer thing I gotta take real quick.
Oh, this is the first time. This is the problem with in person. So now
do business.
I can't. My phone's off.
Kim's phone is helping record. So now where does that leave us? I'm going to turn Tom's mic off here so we don't get all the background.
Where does that leave us? Oh my God, I don't know.
How do we implement this? I mean, they've, I don't want to be poor us BC realtors just having this conversation now, but now we are in a position where are we just left in the weeds? Like you've been on the regulatory side of, you've been in the organized side of things in real estate. How does that trickle down to us now? And then how do we figure out, because we've only got 3 months until this comes in place and I've got zero more instruction on it.
Yeah, none of us have. And brokerages are going to be the ones that are left with the responsibility of dealing with it. And no one knows what the rules are going to be. It's very frustrating. I don't know what the answer is. Who's gonna monitor or look after the for sale by owners? Right?
Yeah. Oh.
No, there's no one to monitor it.
I didn't even think about that, Tom. I'm going to turn your microphone back on.
This isn't a realtor. This is a legislation. This is for sale by owners as well.
What do we do with for sale by owner? How does that contract get? Who regulates that?
Is it the lawyer now then?
I would assume it's the lawyer because the lawyer is essentially doing all the other things for this. And again, our for sale by owner here, I don't know what it's like in BC. It's like you can just say, I'm selling my house. I put up my own sign and I post it and I take everything. But we also have mere postings in Ontario.
Yeah,
we do too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like I hire a real estate brokerage, but it's just to get it on MLS and I still do everything myself.
But they're not allowed to give advice.
No.
Because there's no agency.
No.
So they can advise the seller to make sure that a deposit is coming in at the very beginning of their offer to make sure that if they rescind the offer, that they can get payment.
Here's a better one. Do you think it's going to come in currently in new construction, if I just do nothing, the offer goes ahead?
Right.
Yeah.
That's under REDMA rules.
So is it then going to be, I have to say, okay, I'm going forward? Or if you just don't hear from me, I am going forward?
Yeah. Again, it's so many, I don't know.
I was educated by one of the YouTube channels from one of the guys that was actually at the course yesterday, and I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was Andrew, out in Nova Scotia. They just brought in this year removing your conditions in writing. Before, it was just, here's my conditions.
Oh.
And if we go past that condition date and I don't contact you, then it's a firm deal.
Excuse me?
Yeah. That's like, what do they call that? Negative. It's almost like negative billing or whatever they call it. It's like, but that's what it is right now in
terms of new construction.
You just, all you do is go show up that last day, pay your deposit, your next deposit, and they're like, okay, we're going ahead.
Right.
So I can't believe until the year 2021 or 2022, they were like, not removing their conditions in writing. And
wow.
I'm like, this is insanity. So when that rule came in, I commented, I'm like, what decade are you guys, what century are you guys living in to have run your whole real estate industry? Think of the trust that must be there.
Oh, I can't imagine it.
Like you actually have to not remove your conditions in writing. If you're not going to go ahead with it, you have to give them written notice.
Right. Yeah. Not
Insanity.
that you're going ahead with it by
Absolutely.
waiving or fulfilling the condition, right?
So what do you think of this, Tom? From the outsider looking in.
Okay, so I want to think about this from take myself out of someone that is a real estate agent and just think like, okay, I'm somebody that doesn't know a ton about what's going on, and I want to buy a house, and I hear that the government, whether it's actually the government or if I see a headline, I'm like, okay, I'm a potential home buyer next year. I'm gonna buy a house. I'm now being protected by the government to buy my house. Like that's what's going through my mind, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is a good thing for me because they are protecting me. And whether you love realtors or don't like realtors, work with one, don't work with one, do whatever you want to do. But now I'm protected for 3 days. Like I can understand why the public's going, yes, great. This is good. Like I get it, right?
Yeah.
So that is where policy is so easily influenced by
Here's the thing.
sentiment.
You know, if you watch this podcast and you've heard what we've talked about so far, you probably understand our side of it as well. And recognizing that our side of it's not like, oh, this is going to hurt us. It's like, no, if we're hired by someone, we want to be able to give them the best advice and actually help them get to a point that they are satisfied with what they've done.
Right.
Right. But we are never going to have the influence as us three, or even a real estate board putting out an article about it. If the government puts it out, more people are going to see it and they're going to come to their opinions. And most people are going to read a headline. There's a very small percentage of the population that's going to watch this or watch other things like this that see the other perspective.
Right.
So we're never going to win this argument it's not even an argument, but just this discussion to the public because we don't have that power to get the message across. Do we? It sounds like we don't because they didn't listen to anything that was recommended.
You know what I think about our messaging right now, and this is a reason why, or part of why I wanted to do this podcast. I actually think something as stupid as you and me, two idiots sitting down talking to a smart person every week, is better messaging than our entire government can do.
I also think, though,
any of these things.
we are trying to say things in a way that is clear.
Yeah, like real life talk.
Like real people
and
talking.
Simple.
Yeah.
Right? But no,
She just called us simple.
no,
Yeah,
that's
I'll
not
take
what I
it.
meant.
I'll take it.
But
It's actually pretty good compared to what we've been called.
I think that's one of the challenges, right? Like, the government or industries or whatever, they make things too complicated. And our job is to simplify and just make sure it's easily. But this topic, we don't even know what's going on. Like, we can't even simplify it yet.
There was a HBO, the John Oliver program that he does, and he breaks things down. And one of the episodes last year was like a new bill coming into the States, and he was saying is like what they do is they make it as absolutely boring and long as possible so that they can sneak these things through because the average person ain't gonna read it.
Yep.
They're not gonna read it. Like make it boring, make it confusing,
Yeah.
and then get it through.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to read like a court order or like something on a charge on title?
No, that's not my job.
Oh, you
normally.
got you
the
guys
lawyers
things
do it.
differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you've ever tried to read a charge on title in BC, you're like, it's like, it would be really easy. If there's an easement on your title, it should say the eastward most 3 feet of this property is an easement or whatever.
Sure.
It does not say that.
No.
It is, I read them all the time and I can't make sense out of any of them. I wanted to make another point, which could be coming in. We don't know yet. There is the possibility that with this cooling off period, if you have multiple offers, get this, Tom, after the offer is firm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After the offer
Cooling
is
off
firm and
period's done.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to go back to all of the other buyers that wrote a multiple offer and tell them where all of the other offers came in at price wise.
Oh, so so what they're doing here is they're slowly introducing the open auction style, but it's after the fact, so that when they officially bring it in, it's like, well, we were already kind of doing it.
Can you imagine 3 days after getting 21 offers, going back to all agents and being like, by the way,
And this is where you ranked?
yes,
Do you have to tell them what each was or just where they ranked?
with apparently, from what I've read so far, with redacted information, you have to disclose the other offers.
So it's just a sheet of what number you were out of the offers. It's not the
Redacted
price.
information to me means I take a black Sharpie and cross out names.
And send them all the offers?
I don't know. We don't know. But it does say that we have to, because what they want to do is they want to know, okay, did somebody overshoot? Was it one person that overshot by $150,000? Or was it everybody that overshot? You know, how close was it?
Sorry, who wants to know this?
This is what the listing agent would have to provide to the buyer. So I guess the buyer and the buyer's agent, they feel the buyer and the buyer's agent should know where they stood in the negotiation for future negotiations. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense in terms of what you're telling me.
Is it gonna
It sounds
happen?
like a lot of additional things to do when most of those people have moved on already to the next property.
Totally.
right?
I don't see that happening. It can't happen.
There's the other thing going on is, have you tried to get feedback from a showing?
Yeah, we now call them directly because otherwise they don't fill out our auto.
You know how
form.
painful it is to get, hey, what did your buyer think of the property?
It's very difficult.
Very. Are you going to get this? Are you going to get a
Well,
list
exactly.
from, like, it's just not realistic. It's not going to happen. And there is another push, which was one of the recommendations, that if you counter an offer in a multiple offer situation, you have to disclose the price of the other offer.
That you've countered back to the
So
offer.
let's say I've got two.
Yeah.
And, let's say they're within, I don't know, let's say they're $100,000 apart. You know how a lot of agents, because it's their job, they get cheeky with the highest one and try and push it up even more. That is their job.
It's the reality of it, yes.
They are hired by the seller to get the most amount of money.
Yep.
They would then have to disclose the amount of the other offer.
To the one that they countered to.
Yes.
So let's say I have two offers, one's for 1.1 million, one's for $1 million. I counter the 1.1 million offer at $1,025,000.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You have to tell them the other offer is only $1 million.
Well, that's gonna so then what
Done. Negotiations over.
to
And
take
then what
away
do you do?
any power. And again, I know that we come from this from like a 5-year, 10-year from the markets we worked in of sellers held every card. Don't give the sellers another advantage. But like as the market starts to shift here, the buyers are going to start holding the cards, and you're taking away any actual power from a seller to sell their own property for what they want is the most amount of money.
And let's not forget, buyers turn into sellers.
Yeah.
Well, that's so here's the thing, right? This is keying your own car. This is keying the car you are about to buy and going, well, I need a deal now. And then you just bought a car that got keyed. Like, that is how stupid this whole thing is. But like you said, the tides have turned. What you can't do in this industry is you can't put in law for market condition.
No.
Right? That is the problem. And that's what the realtors are saying, because everything turns back around.
Yeah.
And then it goes the other way. I'll give you an example. In BC, they also put in, if you do assign a contract, the original seller gets the profit. So in this market,
That would make no sense
In
to
this
assign
market-
the contract.
correct.
Yeah.
So in this market, as prices are going down,
Oh.
Right?
Does the original seller
Should
take the
the-
difference?
does the other person then get the benefit of the downturn in price? Should the seller then only take what it's worth on closing? No. Right? So the seller, I was against that. I was like, listen, the seller agreed to a price on March 15th. They don't close till June 15th. They get the March 15th price. But they're like, no, that's not fair. Right? So this is the BS of trying to.
It's only
make
fair
things-
when you've made money, not when you've
if
lost
you
money.
make money, it shouldn't be the person that took the risk of buying that property. It should only be the original seller. It's just stupidity.
Also, for the most part, like assigning a property is a risky thing to do. If you're buying a property just to assign it, that's very risky. To
Yes.
think it's going to work out for you. Don't go buy a property because you think you're going to assign it and make money on it. Unless you know what you're doing.
I wouldn't even do it if I know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I have a
That's
neighbor
very
that talked,
risky.
For
Yeah.
the last 2 years, I had a neighbor.
That's
that was like-
that's literally speculation. That's like
Yes.
that is absolutely speculation.
That's the definition.
Yes.
Yes.
So it is. I have a neighbor that was talking about that for the longest time, and every time it's like, okay, what do we do? Let's look at a flip. Let's look at this. And I'm like, dude, I don't want any part of that. I'm like, I love you, man. I'd love to make the money, but the risk that's there is just not good for anyone.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't have a plan to hold that property, it makes me so angry. I don't know. It is. I just think it's. Can you imagine if we regulated our health care, for instance, without the advice of doctors and nurses? Maybe they do
Oh,
that.
that makes sense.
Maybe they do that, right? But I don't know. It just, to me, it was so one-sided for market conditions. And now that market conditions have changed, I had an agent in my market just 2 weeks ago phoning all of the listings where his buyer wanted. And he was like, how much off the price? How motivated is your person? And I was like, you haven't even seen the property yet. Is it right? He's like, my buyer does not care. We are only out there to get the deal.
I want to ask you about that really quick. So when you had come on my channel last week, one of the things that came up in the comments, because you had said, if you're just going to try to get the best deal off someone that's hurting the most. Don't do that, because that's not the right way to buy a property. And someone said like, well, sellers had all the advantage before, they were gouging buyers. Now buyers can go gouge sellers. But just to be clear, what you were trying to say was like, don't just buy the property because you think you got the most amount off a price, which maybe wasn't even the price it should have been, just to hurt someone. Buy it because the numbers make sense.
Right.
Not only that,
Like, don't just go look for the best. Like, you know what I'm trying to say.
Buy it because it's the property you want.
Yeah.
You not just because you're screwing someone else. Like literally, there are buyers out there right now going, "I just want someone else to feel the pain
that they have experienced
and I'm like,
the last
so
2
you're
years.
going to make $1.2 million investment because you can get it off of $1.4 million, and you think that's a great deal, but does the house work for you? That was not the question. The question was not, is this a good purchase? The question was, how much off of the price can I get? If you're making that decision, you are a ridiculous buyer.
Kim, in your market right now, like let's look at, okay, the absolute craziness. Was February the peak for you too? Like pretty much for everybody in terms of prices?
Yeah, I think our absorption rate was 100% in May, I think it was. Yeah, May or March or May, I can't remember exactly.
So from when it was extremely crazy to where it's at today.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do the comparison. Crazy times, how many days on market was average?
Crazy times?
Yeah. A day.
Yeah, like things were selling within. Well, we did a lot of holding offers, right?
So 7
let's
days.
say 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then now for the properties that actually are selling. So if the absorption rate was 100 back in the peak, what's the absorption rate now?
Absorption rate, days on market is gone. But I'm telling everybody, you're back to 30 to 60 days, and you're back to 2019 behavior, right? It's the COVID 2020 and 2021 behavior is gone. Like it's just not happening. But like now pricing is the number one thing that you have to get bang on. If you are not priced properly, you're not moving at all. You're not even getting showings.
One of the things I tell all my sellers, and I don't know, maybe it was Rich that first told us this, but like 95% of marketing is price.
100%.
Now that last 5%, we got to do a lot, and it's the staging super expensive, and all those things are important in negotiation, but none of that matters if you're priced wrong.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what I think, what Kim thinks, what Steve thinks, what any other person thinks or the seller thinks. What does the market think?
That's right.
And if the market's not reacting, it's not that they don't like your house. They just don't like your house at its current price.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you seen buyers sniffing around for deals, or is it just like the pricing is still so?
Well, I've dealt with some buyers that, we're out and about and, they're like, well, how low can we come in? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, number one, let's go see the house. But
it's a good place to start.
Yeah. And then my honest opinion has to come in and say, listen, these guys are either priced pretty good, fairly well. I think we could probably get a little bit off, but there's no coming in 100 low.
Right.
Or I would say, okay, this is still COVID pricing and it's not there anymore. So I think they're at least 100 over or whatever, depending on the property. And then we either wait it out or you can try an offer, but most sellers they're not going to like that offer if you come in that low. So you're better off to hold off for a little bit and see if we get a price reduction happening and then come to the table. But yeah, it's...
a lot of conversations I've been having recently, because I've gotten a few extreme lowball offers on things. And obviously we receive an offer. We have to legally show it to our seller within I think the wording's like as fast as possible.
Yeah.
The wording. And I'll always call them and say, hey, I got an offer. Just remember, I didn't bring you this offer. Don't shoot me. I'm the messenger. Here's what it is. What would you like to do? And typically they're like, don't even respond to it. We have no interest in negotiating with someone that's going to come in like that because we understand what they're doing.
Right.
And then sometimes I'll go back and say, listen, they're not going to respond. We're not even going to counter. We're going to let this thing die. And then they come up 50 grand.
Yeah.
And then they start playing again. So I understand the thing, but then, and again, this is all in our heads. This is all psychological for the sellers. Everyone feels like they want to win. Everyone feels like they want to get that thing. And the seller knows they came in this low. They're like, don't even bother. I don't want to deal with this person because of the way they started.
Right.
But then there's maybe a seller out there that's like, I need to sell this in the next 2 weeks. I bought something that's closing. Yeah. Give me anything.
Right.
So I guess it's kind of like you never know. And Foch, we talked to about this, right? Daniel Foch. He's like, if you're willing to to go put in the effort of making 12, 20 offers, not the same time, obviously, on properties to try and find that one, and you're willing to do that, you will maybe eventually find one.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a smaller percentage of the market than maybe people think.
And I would suggest that, I mean, what I tell all of my sellers right now is, listen, that person is on the opposite side of the negotiating table to you, so they're coming in with a price, and it is your responsibility to counter this offer, whether it be at full asking.
Yeah.
It is your responsibility to, if you want to get this home sold, if you just turn your nose up at any offer right now in my market, if it's $100,000 under ask, you got to counter it somehow.
Yep.
I'm not telling you to necessarily take it, depending on where the stats are, but it is your responsibility to reply to this, because getting offended right now as a seller is not the right move, right? Like right now, getting the offer is the win.
Yeah, just getting it.
Just getting the offer is the win.
Well, and then you find out if the buyer is just fishing or not, right? Like, and I've done the same advice for my sellers. It's like, I understand this is extremely low. We'll counter back at full price.
Yeah, because I've had two recent situations where it's like, one was like, no, this was my take it or leave it. And then the other one was like, okay, let's start negotiating.
What I would do to anyone still listening or watching at this point, and I talked about this on another one, we've got people signed up. So if you want the Toronto list, let me know. If you want the Surrey list, let Steve know. If you want the Vernon, I always forget. Kelowna. I always forget Kelowna.
Anywhere in the Okanagan.
I thought you were in Vernon.
I live in Vernon, which is 30 minutes north of Kelowna, but I work the two communities.
Okay.
But if you're a buyer actually looking for that type of seller that needs to sell, what started to come back in the broker remarks on my board that we can search for is people will legitimately write motivated seller.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you want a list of those properties, I can send it to you right now. I know there's like 150 of them in Toronto.
I found a property one time for an elderly lady that was in a wheelchair by searching the comments of expired listings for the word wheelchair. And we found that property. I called the listing agent. We got the deal together 6 months after it expired.
Wow.
Right. So that is a tool that agents can use to find the properties they're looking for.
And you know what? And I'm going to get, this is going to be the easiest thing. Like, realtor says market's coming back. But like, I literally this morning got an email from a house listing we had on the market a month ago. And it was just like a timing personal thing. We can only have it up for 30 days. Didn't get our price, took it off. We're going to hang tight and wait. Saying, hey, are you interested in still selling that? Like, someone went off market for a neighborhood for their buyers. And I texted my guy this morning. He's like, yeah, send them over.
Perfect.
Let them see it.
Yeah.
So it's like people are starting to sniff around. And like, the only time I see people go looking at expireds or stuff that is no longer on the market is when there's not a lot of inventory.
Right.
Which is dropping. Our inventory is dropping. Is your?
Ours is coming up.
Really?
Yeah.
Ours is dropping off. Like, we've lost more than 10% in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's starting to drop like crazy. I guess we should.
Should we wrap it up? That was fun, Kim.
We should probably wrap. Kim, we are not going to see you again until November 14th and 15th at Masters Academy.
In that? I will be there. I'm excited. I got my son coming as well, so that'll be really cool.
What do you look forward to most at RRI, at Masters Academy?
Masters Academy?
What's your favorite part besides the cocktail hour?
Well, my favorite part is Members Day.
Yeah.
Which is the day after 14th and 15th.
See if we can get an upsell for the sponsor, the coaching there, because she's trying to sell. She's trying to upsell you right now.
No, not at all. But the reason I love Members Day so much is just that more personal roundtable, mastermind kind of vibe, which is always a benefit and always amazing.
Yesterday kind of felt like that.
Yeah. It was amazing.
I'm specifically, I love the lightning rounds. I like a 15-minute like producer going, this is it. Right. And it's just like, okay, that's where I start making notes.
Well, and the meat and potatoes that Rich gets, people up on stage actually saying, this is what I do, is so valuable to everybody coming. And the fact that, we have all been over 10 times and everybody says, well, why do you, it's the same stuff every time. And I said, well, but I'm not different every time I go, I'm not the same every time I go.
You're ready to accept a new idea sometimes.
Right. Because you can only implement really 1 to 3 ideas each time you go. So every 6 months.
I made one note yesterday.
Yeah.
And
thanks. One note, eh?
No, honestly, it was from, I made one note and it was from Nolan's presentation. Yeah. And it's like, this is happening.
Right.
Yep.
Right. and that was pretty cool. So that's what Masters Academy is also good for.
Can I say something quickly before we wrap this? And if you're looking for a ticket for this, you can get $200 off in the link in the description or the show notes if you're listening on the audio. Do you think that one of the qualifying questions when a consumer is interviewing a real estate agent, and I'm not saying that agents that aren't in some type of coaching or mentorship aren't also great, but it's like the people that we've met through these conferences take their business seriously and are really damn good at what they do. And if I'm a consumer watching this right now being like, I'm not buying a ticket to a real estate conference, fine. But the next time you interview a realtor, ask them if they're coached or if they're in any mastermind groups. Do you think that's something that you could almost qualify them with? Because if they're willing to spend time and money on getting better in their own business, they're probably good at what they do. And not saying you're not if you're not in it, but I think it's just interesting.
I love to see. I met a lady. It was like a designer for a buyer on a property, blah, blah, blah. And we just happened to meet up early before the client and the other realtor got there. And she's a designer, let's call it engineer, whatever she's doing, renovations. And she belonged to an association and was coached in her industry. And I was like, I didn't even know they did that in that industry.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people know that we can get coaches.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't
The general public,
I don't
I
think
don't-
the public knows that a
No.
lot of real estate agents pay a lot of money every year to be coached.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot of
It's
money.
not
I
cheap.
actually just had one of my friends say, we were out having dinner and having a drink, and I told him I was coming here because I was getting involved with people that I'm at the same organization and getting coached. And he says, "Why do you need coaching?" I said, "What do you mean? Why do I need coaching? I always should be improving on my own skills and what I do for my clients." He
And
says,
wouldn't you want the person that you hired to have that mindset?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've learned
Yeah.
more.
It was really interesting. I couldn't believe that and this guy's a lawyer. Like he's
Yeah.
very smart.
Yeah.
But he challenged me on why I needed a coach. And I'm like, well, coach shines his flashlight in my dark corners that I need lit up so that I can change them, right?
Yeah.
So
Awesome. Well, I invite everybody out. Buy your tickets now. Save $200 by clicking the link in the description below. See us in Northern Toronto, Masters Academy, the 14th and 15th of November. I will be there. Tom will be there.
Kim will be there.
I will be there.
I will be sharing a hotel room with one of you. I'll let you guys do it.
Kim, people that are viewing this and listening to this that didn't already know who you were, how can they find you? And if they're interested in your help in the markets that you work in, what's the best place to go to connect with you?
Sure. You know what? If you just Google my name, I should pop up. No problem.
Heizmann,
Kim Heizmann, like the trophy.
like the trophy.
Like the trophy, but no S. It's a Z. So it's
it's even cooler then.
H-E-I-Z.
It's way cooler with a Z.
Yeah. But yeah, if you Google that, everything will come up. My cell phone is not a secret. I'm not a secret agent.
Steve is.
Oh, send me the links and I'll put everything down below in the
Sure.
description.
We're going to wrap this up, but I just realized that we're going to have you back because we didn't even bring up the limited dual agency.
Oh,
we didn't even talk about it. And that could be a whole nother episode on its own, which could be a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
for anyone saying like, what the heck does that mean? It means that it's very, very difficult to represent a seller and a buyer on the same transaction.
That's right.
Where we can do this in Ontario legally.
And we
You
no
want to
longer
blow
can.
somebody else's mind? We can double end a property. We can't give limited dual agency. So if you
I
can
don't even
figure
know
out what that statement means,
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Kim, any last words?
No, thanks for having me. And if anybody wants any information on the Okanagan, just give me a
Have
shout.
you watched our podcast before?
I have.
Have you got to the end?
No.
Oh, okay.
Damn.
Well,
Sorry.
watch this. Tom.
My ending. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching another episode of the Tom Storey Show. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it.